episode of Quilt with the Stars is brought to you by Baby Lock, for the love of sewing, and Koala Cabinets, sewing furniture custom built in America. Hi, you're watching Quilt with the Stars, and we are back with another episode. Joanie Holton, welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
It's great. It's TailorMade is the company, and Joanie Holton is one half of that team. Melanie, your sis, helps you out.
The big sis.
The big sis. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk today about a project that is something that you did, and let's take a look at it on the wall. Tell me a little bit about this project.
This was our basic idea, was to get something that was an easy beginner applique quilt.
Great.
We wanted it something that was approachable. It's a raw edge applique, and it's got a very modern feel to it.
Great. Now, I work with a lot of beginners, and many of our audience will know what raw edge applique is, but for those who don't, what is raw edge applique?
Typically in applique, you're going to be folding under those edges when you applique, so it's nice and clean around the edge. And this one, we're not doing that. We're leaving the edges raw and unfolded.
And that's a choice that a person can make if they are not comfortable doing needle turn, hand-turned applique, really fancy, or if they need something done more quickly. Which I know that you need to do in your line of work.
Very often.
So let's take a look at the elements of this project, and we won't, do the full thing today. We won't end up with your gorgeous quilt at the end of our episode, but we certainly can go through the tips, the techniques, and the ways that you achieve this. So what do we have right here?
Start with our basic piecing. You're going to want to put the whole quilt top together before we do any appliquing on this project, because we're not putting it into the seams. So we're going to start out with our rows. You're going to take your main block, which is 12.5 inches, and your first piece of lattice. And you're going to sew that together in a row. You've got 4 blocks and 2 lattice to make your first row. Then you take a lattice and your little white square, 3 lattice, 2 white squares, sew them together.
You're calling them lattices
or sashing.
But I just want to make sure it's sashing or cornerstones. Sometimes the terminology can be, it's like, oh, I thought that was this, or, or even blocks can change name. A churn dash to one person is a monkey wrench to another person, and sometimes it's good.
Too many names.
Too many names, exactly. So the piecing comes first,
yes,
and then you
then we're going to sew our rows together. So you've got your block row and your lattice row. You're going to make a nice long seam all the way across.
Great. And then, and the reason that you've done, you've pieced like fabric to like, but it's because you're giving yourself some guidelines. Is that right?
Exactly.
For the applique,
For the
which
applique,
comes next.
it gives you a good base to put your starburst on, so you have something to line it up to.
I think that's really smart.
So this is our template for our starburst, but it's a little hard to work with paper, especially when we're doing something this big. So what you're going to want to do is going to make a hard plastic template to work with.
And that's kind of popping up.
That's kind of popping up. So I have my children's lovely art projects.
How cool is that?
And they work as weights very well.
I have to grab the snail. Wait, hold on. There's one more.
Oh, there's one more.
And I just love it.
It's my daughter's snail.
It's got a little pipe cleaner thing on it. Anyway, I just like
it keeps my kids with me all the time.
It's very cool.
So that helps you so it stays in position. It's not going to move around. And then I just take a nice, any ruler, straight edge ruler, and you're just going to trace your template.
Sure.
And
template plastic can be purchased at the quilt shop or at the art store?
Anywhere, yeah. And there's some on rolls, there's some flat, whatever it works. Then you're just going to follow those lines, just like in art school.
Sure.
Art class.
Yeah.
And as you do that, then you're going to cut out your template. Oh, one pin, point. I always put the R in the middle. R in the center for right side. So when it's cut out, I know which side is the right. It's backwards if it's wrong.
Right, exactly. It's reversed.
It's reversed.
You will need both
You need both
ways.
sides.
Okay.
So once we have our template, then we're going to move to the fabric for our squares. So we've got our 12.5 inch fabric cut, and we've got our fusible webbing, whatever kind you like to use.
Sure. There's lots of different kinds
There's
on the
lots of
market.
different brands.
You can go to fonsandporter.com, by the way, for all kinds of information about supplies, things like that.
So you're going to iron that in place, starting from your center and moving out.
And why do you do that center out?
It helps so you don't have wrinkles, and it helps so it doesn't shift when you're ironing and you get all the glue sticky things on your ironing pad.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
And then you need to wipe it off. And
then,
dryer sheets are awesome for that.
I had no idea.
You know what? You were giving me tips. I just gave you one.
You did.
Cool. That's very exciting.
Now we're going to take our plastic template. We're going to place it on the paper side, which makes it really easy to draw. Use my little weights to keep it in place.
Where's Mr. Snail?
Oh, Snail.
Yep.
See,
You don't really need them, but I want them there. And you have a tip
My
there.
tip for appliquing is using mechanical pencils when you're tracing your templates. You get a much closer edge true to your template when you're tracing.
It doesn't go, blunted. It doesn't get
Right,
blunted.
it's not, it's a consistent size, it doesn't change.
But
and
if you mess up, you can erase it.
You can erase it and you're good to go. And on this the paper, it works beautifully.
Great.
So you trace all the way around, and this is your end result.
Very nice.
And then you're gonna go ahead, and I do this production style when I do all 9.
Yes.
Just keep going.
I would too. Get them all done, all your
Right.
sets done, and
Right.
then go on to the next step, which is
cutting out your template. So you're just gonna follow those lines, cutting out, and you have your lovely starburst, and your paper is still on back.
And are you using, what scissors do you? You're cutting through paper, you're cutting through fabric. How do you decide which scissors?
I use my fabric scissors
Okay.
because that's the main piece.
That's what's most important.
Yes, and I find that if I use my paper, the edges get a little rough and sometimes they can fray.
Absolutely.
And I don't want any fraying yet.
You do so much production work. I do have a question. This is a burning question for me.
It's okay.
Do you sharpen your scissors regularly?
I try to.
Yeah.
Typically, I only get it about once a year.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't feel so bad because I was like, gosh, I'm really cutting a lot and I'm doing this. How
No.
often is when you know?
If I'm able to, because if I'm sharpening them, I have to give them to somebody and I'm not using them, and that's
Exactly.
not usually something I can afford.
No,
So
no.
it's typically once a year I get them sharpened.
How much does it cost to get a nice pair of scissors sharpened? It's different everywhere. But
It's different everywhere. I have a guy who does it for about $10.
oh, cool. Okay,
So
great.
It's not bad
Nothing too
at
bad.
all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm learning all kinds of
Okay.
things. Okay.
So as
Back
we
to the project.
as we have this now you can take off your paper backing because we're going to be placing all of them on our quilt top.
We have those guidelines to show us
We
exactly
do.
how.
So you're going to take that off, and then now we're positioning on, and on our quilt we decided to turn them and not have them all go the same way, but that's what you can do now. This is when you get to play, turn them, but you're lining them up inside that block area.
Yes, that seam.
Yep.
Cool.
Once you have them all happy and where you want them to be, then you can start pressing down, and again, center out.
Center out. Great. Let's take another look at the project because you
Wonderful.
added a little embellishment in
We
there.
did. We thought it needed just a little something else, so
Yes.
we added little white buttons in the center.
Darling. And can you please tell us the name of the long arm quilter who did this quilting?
She did such a beautiful job. Her name is Patty Marin.
I love the motif that she did. It almost looks like a little beaded curtain.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful, beautiful job on the quilting.
Very cool. Well, Joanie, thank you so much from TailorMade for coming on Quilt with the Stars.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll see you.
This episode of Quilt with the Stars is brought to you by Baby Lock for the love of sewing and Koala Cabinets, sewing furniture custom built in America.